The chair recognizes the gentlelady from South Dakota, Ms. Herseth Sandlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, late last year, the results of a study co-sponsored by your department were released supporting the possibility of mid-range ethanol blends, such as E20 or E30, that can enhance fuel economy for some non-flex fuel vehicles. And an update last month from the department on its intermediate ethanol blends testing recognizes the urgent need for continued and expanded testing based on the new RFS and the anticipated saturation of the E10 market. The update reports that the department will have at least 160 test vehicles online this month, and I'm glad to see is also evaluating the effects of higher ethanol blends on smaller engines such as pressure washers. So 2 questions. When do you expect definitive results on the effect of intermediate ethanol blends on most engine families? And has the department considered evaluating higher ethanol blends over E20?
To my knowledge, we have not considered, to take your second question first, we have not considered above E20, and we are testing various engines for E15 and E20. The concern is that with the concentration of the production of ethanol only in the Midwest, that we will not encourage the nationwide adoption of ethanol, and we need to do that, and that a way to stimulate that would be to increase the availability of E15 and E20.
So what exactly, I'm not sure I follow what the concern is about testing E30 at the same time.
We can test anything, but the E20 is enough to get us through the...
Beyond the saturation of the E10 market.
The whole issue related to E10.
And then when do you expect those definitive results?
I don't have a quick answer for you on that, and I'd be happy to get it for you.
Okay, if you could.
Sure.
On wind energy, I was encouraged to see
wind energy.
Wind, yes.
Yeah.
Your department released its 20% report earlier this month, concluding that wind energy could contribute as much as 20% of the nation's electricity by 2030, while significantly reducing the carbon footprint. And Assistant Secretary Andrew Karsner was quoted as saying that this can happen for less than ½ a cent a kilowatt hour. So what do you think are the key steps Congress must take this year and next to make this possible? And what do you think is key to facilitating the siting of new transmission infrastructure, given that the report also states that transmission must be categorized with the interstate highway system?
Well, I think the issue related to transmission is something that we would encourage. I think we have enough tools to encourage that. So I think we have, to my knowledge, we do not need work from Congress, but I would be happy to come back to you again if that proves to be otherwise.
So you're confident that there is enough incentives that currently exist for private investment alone to move forward with the building of the transmission capacity?
I think so. Based on my discussions with the participants in that industry.
How about the production tax credits? Would you favor the extension of the production tax credit for wind energy production?
There again, we'll be happy to work with Congress to do that. Sure.
Do you think that that's key in order to get to the point where we can meet the 20%?
It would appear that it is.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentlelady's time has expired. The chair recognizes the gentlelady from South Dakota, Ms. Herseth Sandlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, welcome. If you look at my district, the entire state of South Dakota, from end to end, whether it's our vast fields of corn and soybeans on the eastern side of the state, wind across every part of the state, and the great forests of the Black Hills in the west, South Dakota embodies the idea that we need a diversified approach to our national energy policy. And in particular, we need to take advantage, as Ms. Solis was saying, of new opportunities for renewable energy. So as we strive to meet our national energy needs, we must continue to recognize, I think, that rural America has much to offer, and rural states should be at the center of the solution as our national energy policy shifts and adjusts in ways that can enhance our national and economic security, promote innovation and conservation, and ultimately ease the strain on the budgets of families and businesses. Now, with the passage of the original renewable fuels standard in 2005 and then the aggressive increase included in last year's energy bill, we've already taken some initial key steps in the right direction as we seek to take advantage of the contribution of agricultural producers in rural states to reduce our dependence on foreign oil and the overall carbon emissions through an increase in production of biofuels, wind, and other types of renewable energy. I respectfully disagree with the ranking member, the gentleman from Wisconsin, on the impact of ethanol. Ethanol has kept gas prices from going even further, upwards of 15% higher than they are today, and the price of corn to make ethanol has very little to do with the increase in food prices when compared to other factors like the cost of energy and the processing and transportation of food. So I look forward to your testimony on these and other issues, in particular infrastructure issues for the transmission of wind energy. Thank you for being here. I yield back.
Gentlelady's time has expired. The chair recognizes the gentleman from South Dakota, Ms. Herseth Sandlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank you for having this important hearing, and I thank our witnesses for testifying. To reiterate some of the important points made by some of my colleagues, I represent the entire state of South Dakota, a very rural state, and so you can imagine the impact that record gas prices are having on families and businesses across the state. While we have been one of the leaders in biofuels production, that it has had a moderating influence on the price of gas, upwards of 15%, as we've seen in some analysis that we explored with oil company executives that generally agreed, although they didn't think that it was upwards of at least 15%, that ethanol has been able to, again, moderate the price that we would see otherwise if we didn't have ethanol production today. But I do think it's important as we explore with our witnesses today the other impacts. I have long advocated in times of record gas prices, whether it was last year, the year before, or now, that we not continue to add oil to the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to help alleviate some of the market pressures. But I'd also like to explore with the witness today the impact of our domestic refining capacity, as well as how we develop a plan for the SPR in light of the projected effects of last year's energy bill and the standards that we put in and what that's projected to save us in terms of imported oil over time. So again, I thank the chairman and the witnesses and look forward to their testimony.
Ms. Herseth Sandlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Rusko, I think in response to some of the questions of Mr. Shadig and the recommendations as it relates to more cost-effective ways of filling the SPR, he discussed with you the whole issue of heavier versus lighter crude into the SPR. I'd like to ask you about the employment of the dollar cost averaging that you discussed. Why isn't that recommendation being employed?
I don't know why.
Are you aware of any specific opposition to employing this method when making purchases?
I think that the primary opposition is that the DOE has essentially used royalty in kind oil only to fill or almost exclusively to fill the SPR, and
since when, 1999, later?
Yeah, since about 1999, yes. And the problem with that is that there's no real coordination between DOE and DOI in terms of how to do that. You could still use royalty in kind oil, but it may be a lack of coordination or a lack of imagination.
No, you're right.
Most likely, I would think you're right on that. We've seen a lot of lack of coordination between agencies, and if we can save dollars, we appreciate your insight today as we address these issues further. Dr. Cooper, your written testimony notes on page 6 that there is a, quote, disastrous shortfall in domestic refining capacity, and the refinery shortfall has doubled to over 3 million barrels per day since the early 1990s. To what factors do you attribute the increasing refining capacity shortfall over that period of time, and what do you think would be the optimal increase in domestic refining capacity over the next 5 years?
Well, the cause of the lack of capacity is clear. The industry has not provided it. The oil industry will not build enough refineries in this country.
My time's almost up. So in addition to the Dingell-Stupak bill, just an optimal increase over the next 5 years, what would you say? I mean,
it'd be wonderful. How are you going to make them do it? The oil industry won't do it. You haul them up here, and they will tell you why they're not going to build any more refineries. You cannot depend on the oil industry to meet our refinery needs.
Okay. Gentlelady's time has expired. The chair recognizes the gentleman from